In Unit 3, we're going to be working with algebraic expressions. You have already seen algebraic expressions when we evaluated expressions and plugged in numbers for variables in previous units. We need to start with some vocabulary and terms that you're going to need to know, so make sure you get these written down. Let's start with the definition of an algebraic expression. An algebraic expression is an expression that may contain numbers, operations, and operations are any add, subtract, multiply, or divide, and variables. An example of an expression would be 2z squared plus y minus 3. Now what we want to do is we want to break down this algebraic expression and talk about all the parts of it. One of the first things we need to recognize is variables. The variables in this expression are the z and the y. A variable is a symbol that represents one or more numbers. So the z in this expression could equal 1, could equal 4. Within this expression, all the z's will equal the same thing. And then we have another variable, y, that would be a different number that it represents. In a completely different algebraic expression, z could equal something else and y could equal something else. It's an unknown number. It's called variable because it changes, just like in science. So every algebraic expression is broken up into terms. Terms are the parts of an algebraic expression broken up by addition and subtraction. Now it's important to remember, each term will have a plus or a minus in the middle of it. So when we're looking at our example here, I have 2z squared, that's one term. Even though the 2 and the z squared are multiplied together, that is one expression because it's not separated by addition or subtraction. The next one would be positive y because it's a plus y, so it's a positive y. And then the next one would be negative 3 because it's minus 3, so we have a negative 3. So this specific algebraic expression has 3 terms. We're going to talk more specifically about each of the terms now. Let's look at 2z squared. Now when you have a variable, there's always a number in front of the variable. The number in front of the variable is called the coefficient. The coefficient is the numerical factor of a term with a variable. So if we're looking at 2z squared, the coefficient of 2z squared is the 2 that's attached to the z squared. Now what can sometimes be confusing is that every variable has a coefficient even if there isn't one there. Remember, when you have a number next to a variable, it means multiplication. So if you're looking at the y, the second term in this expression, it has a coefficient, but it's not showing. Think about what number you can multiply anything by that gives you the number. Hopefully you were thinking 1. So 1 times anything is the number itself. So 1 times y would be y. So what happens is, anytime there's a variable with nothing, the coefficient is actually 1. They just don't write it because it doesn't change the value of the expression. So remembering that the coefficient of a variable with no number in front of it is always 1 because 1 times y is y. So the last thing we want to look at is when there is no variable. What do we call an expression like this negative 3 at the end? That is called a constant. A constant is a term without a variable. So this negative 3 is a constant. Now notice that I keep saying negative 3, and that is because it has a minus in front of it. And we know that whenever there's a minus, we change to addition and take the opposite. So the number that's actually there is -3. I'm just understanding that that happens. So a minus in front of the number actually means it's a negative because of how that operation works. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to point this stuff out in an example expression. So we're looking at w squared minus 3x plus 4y minus 8. When we talk about how many terms this expression has, remember terms are separated by pluses or minuses. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, because those are where we're separated. So when we have to write down the terms that we have, I'm looking at w squared negative 3x 4y, and I don't have to write the plus because positive is assumed, and negative 8. Those are the terms that I have in this expression. Coefficients are numbers that are in front of the variables. So when I'm looking for coefficients, I'm only looking at the first 3 terms. The coefficient in w squared is 1. Remember, every variable has a coefficient. If it's not there, it's a 1. The coefficient in negative 3x is -3. And the coefficient in 4y is 4. So there's 3 coefficients. And then the last part is, do we have any constants? And constants are terms without variables. I have one constant, and it is -8. Okay, so then the next thing we need to be able to do is write algebraic expressions using exponents. We already know that an exponent tells you how many times to multiply the base number. So if, for example, you were given w times w times w, you can see that the constant base in this problem is w. So we've taken w and we've multiplied it 3 times. So that would be w to the 3rd. If you add a coefficient to this expression, you might say something like 1/2 times x times x times x times x. And when you take a number times a variable, remember the number just goes right next to it. So that becomes 1/2 x to the 4th. And just the x is to the 4th, and the 1/2 is the coefficient out front of it. To change this so they both were, you would have to have parentheses around the 1/2 x, so the 4 looks like it's going to both of them. So it works out nicely the way we wrote it there. So how do we use algebraic expressions in real life? Let's take a look at this example. You're saving money to buy a skateboard. You begin with $45 and you save $3 each week. The expression 45 plus 3w gives the amount of money you save after w weeks. So that algebraic expression right there should make sense. You start with $45, so that's where the 45 comes from. And then you're saving $3 each week. So 3w is $3 for every week. So after 1 week, you would multiply 3 times 1, that's $3. 2 weeks, 3 times 2, that's $6. The w represents the changing number of weeks. It's the unknown. It's a variable. It's something that changes. So in example A, when it says how much will you have after 4 weeks, 10 weeks, and 20 weeks, now because we have that algebraic expression, we can plug these numbers in for the w and find the amount saved after each one. So if you look, they take 45 plus 3 times 4. If you notice, they solve for the 12 first because order of operations. You multiply before you add, and after 4 weeks, you have $57. It says after, in B then, it says after 20 weeks, you have $105. So you cannot buy the skateboard yet. You can also use this pattern then to help figure out how long it will take for you to be able to buy it. So it's just like solving the expressions we have in all of the other units where we're just plugging in for the variable. But now it's got this real life application where you're seeing the value of being able to plug in for a number. All right, let's try this on our own and see how we do. Good luck.